Okay, let's talk about Marvel Zombies for a second. This What If episode was amazing, oh my god. So, something to keep in mind, sometime today, maybe around the time this video goes up, I'm not entirely sure, I will have a video on Comics Explained that takes all the Marvel Zombies stories and combines them into one big video. We call it our full story series, but basically it'll all condense it all down into one big video so you guys can basically get the whole treatment when it comes to Marvel Zombies and Marvel Comics. Having said that, the What If episode was fantastic. Now here's the thing about Marvel Zombies, because this confuses the hell out of people. So when it comes to Marvel Zombies, there's two universes to keep in mind. The first one is 2149, and the second one is 91-126. The reason why this matters is 2149 is basically where the zombie virus initially picked up with, right? Where Marvel Zombies initially opened up, where like Magneto's fleeing for his life, and he's trying to fight off all the different zombies. Eventually he's killed, and so on and so forth, and the zombies just kind of spread throughout the world. Over the course of the series, what you end up learning is that the entire concept of the Marvel Zombies basically happening in the first place was essentially a time loop. That what had happened is that in Earth 2149, Robert Reynolds, the Sentry, was infected with the zombie virus. He ended up being transferred along with a handful of other zombies who were trying to escape their dimension to infect other universes. He ended up being transferred to a new universe called 91-126. And basically that universe fell as well, right? That whole universe was taken over by the zombie apocalypse. And so the Watcher in that alternate reality sent Robert Reynolds into the past of Earth 2149, and that's what caused the zombie apocalypse. So it's a loop destined to repeat forever until the end of all things, right? The end of the multiverse. And it was a way to basically keep the whole thing contained so the zombies couldn't get outside of those two universes and infect other universes across the cosmos. But nonetheless, Marvel Zombies was great, right? The whole story itself was fantastic, right? It was written by Robert Kirkman, the guy who wrote The Walking Dead. Marvel Zombies was his test bed. He did that before he did The Walking Dead. But the whole episode was fantastic. There were some great humorous moments in this episode, right? One of the things that I love is like, what is it, Supergiant, I think is what his name was. Technically that great big huge hulking looking guy from like Thanos's Cole Obsidian, his name's actually Black Dwarf, but for obvious reasons, Marvel doesn't use that name in the MCU. But I love seeing him and the Ebony Maw, who still has the best name ever of any villain in the history of comics, the Ebony Maw. I love that name. God, I love that name so much. But nonetheless, so I love like they show up and then just are immediately attacked by the Avengers and then like turn into zombies. I loved that, right? I liked that a lot of it was told from the perspective of Banner. I like the way they chose this, right? That Banner comes crashing down to Earth, and basically it happens in place of what would be Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. I dig this, right? I dig that whole concept. One of the things I also loved is how it started. What a neat, simple little explanation there about how the whole zombie apocalypse took place, right? That like Hank Pym went into the quantum realm to find his wife Janet, and then ultimately she had basically been infected by what was in essence a virus, right? The zombie infection, or as we would interpret it to be, the zombie infection. And then she bites Hank, they basically grow up to their normal sizes, they attack Scott, and then the whole zombie apocalypse breaks out from there. I loved it, right? I absolutely love the way that happened. How small, how neat. What I also love too, and this is one of the things that people kind of tend to underappreciate when it comes to different stories like this in Marvel Comics, the cast, the roster, the surviving heroes. I loved that, right? It's very easy for us to look at that and say, okay, so the surviving heroes are obviously gonna be all the major players, right? Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, all those guys, they're obviously gonna be the ones to make it. I loved that they weren't, right? I loved that they were not the ones that came out on top on this. One of the big questions that I found myself asking is, where's Thor? Where's Thor? Now, there's a couple different options here, right? A couple different possibilities. One is that Thor and the rest of the Asgardians are just still out there in space, right? And that either they were destroyed by Thanos or that Thanos got to Earth before they did. We don't fully know how things went down there. I mean, in all reality, it makes sense, right? I mean, like Thanos at the end of the episode is in possession of all the Infinity Stones, with the exception of the Mind Stone, which is currently in possession of the survivors who are heading to Wakanda, or at least last we saw they were heading to Wakanda. So it makes sense that given the nature of like Infinity War and so on, Loki had that stone with him, and during Infinity War he handed it over to Thanos. So we know that at least last we saw, Loki still had it in his possession. And so it makes sense that Thanos would have shown up like he did during the beginning of Infinity War, but instead of like sparing the Asgardians, he basically killed them all. But the fact that Banner lands there, he doesn't say anything about Thor, right? He's not like, I'm the last surviving member of everybody who was there with Thor, and they're all dead, right? Thanos killed everybody, right? Like Thanos is coming and he killed everyone. It's not like he really says that, right? So we're just kind of left to figure out what's going on with Thor. I doubt we'll get a part 2 to this. If we do, it'll probably end up being in the next season of What If, or maybe even a season after. And it'd be kind of cool if they did that, right? If like the future seasons of What If, like the Black Mirror series on Netflix, like were future seasons built on basically previous seasons, I would love to see that happen. But we don't really know what's going on with Thor, right? We simply just know that he's not there. Having said that, if he did become a zombie, they all would have been screwed even faster than they were, man, because Thor with Mjolnir just lunging this hammer at people. But it also begs the question, would Thor be worthy of lifting his hammer if he was a zombie? Answer that question down in the comments. Do you guys think Thor would have been worthy to lift his hammer if he had been a zombie? I'm curious what your all's responses are on that. But again, beyond that, the whole thing was just, it was beautifully handled. It was beautifully done. It was beautifully written. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And like all the What If series, it really kind of leaves you asking like, what comes next, right? I mean, the only episode of the What If series that kind of gave us a sort of finality, right? Like this is how things end for this universe was episode 4, right? The one with Doctor Strange, where he basically destroyed his own universe. But even then, it kind of leaves you wondering what comes next, because as far as we're aware, Stephen Strange is the sole survivor of his universe. So we don't know what'll happen with him. With this one, like literally Thanos is just standing there as a zombie with the Infinity Gauntlet, presumably ready to blink out half the life in the universe. But we don't really know what form this is gonna take, how it's all gonna unfold, if the heroes will defeat him and get the Infinity Gauntlet from him, and then maybe use some kind of witchcraft and magic to use a combination of the Time Stone and other things to set things back to where they're supposed to be. I would love to see the conclusion, the real conclusion of what this story would look like. It's one of the most fascinating things about the What If series, right? In the comics themselves, you usually get a definitive ending, right? You usually get like a conclusion. It usually in some form or fashion wraps back around to the mythos behind the characters themselves. A really good example is Punisher's family dying, right? A lot of you guys know the Punisher, Frank Castle. His family was killed in Central Park. That's what led him to become the Punisher in the first place. In the What If series, his family never dies in Central Park, so he never really becomes the Punisher as we know him. But instead, his family's basically killed by crooked cops. That leads him to become the Punisher, and the story basically goes forward and says, this is how Frank Castle became the Punisher in this alternate reality, right? So it usually ties in, but it still gives you a definitive ending. With most of the What If episodes here, it's left open-ended to the point where you can actually see some of these elements, and even a lot of these elements, being incorporated in the future of the MCU, in the movies themselves, right? Doctor Strange 2, and the events that are gonna involve Kang, the quantum realm, things along those lines. It's a lot of cool possibilities here. That's one of the things that I love. But for this episode, I actually really wanted to see the conclusion. I was a little disappointed by the fact that the movie just sort of ended with Thanos standing there with the Infinity Gauntlet on, and it's just kind of like, he's probably gonna get the Mind Stone and blink out half the life in the universe, right? Or will he? Like, I'm kind of disappointed that we didn't get that. I really would have liked a definitive ending to this. You know, another thing that I'm a little disappointed about is that we didn't get to see the full-on fight between Wanda and the Incredible Hulk. That would have been cool. Having said that, I did love the whole thing about what Vision was doing, right? Because that seems like a very Vision thing to do. That Vision loves Wanda, he'll do whatever he needs to do in order to help Wanda, and in his mind, if there's a way to cure Wanda, then he's got to keep Wanda alive. But the only way to keep Wanda alive, seemingly, is to ensure that she's adequately fed in order to keep her docile. Otherwise, she'll do exactly what she did, which is lose her mind and then just start attacking things, break out of the facility, and then fly off into the sunset, and then possibly end up being killed by somebody out there who's hunting zombies. And so I thought it was kind of cool that Vision was basically luring people into safety, right? By kind of broadcasting that message saying, hey, this is a safe space, we're working on a cure, bring people there, and then feed them to Wanda. I mean, it's dark. You know, like it's dark and brutal, but it was kind of cool. Seeing Black Panther there, right? Seeing T'Challa there, which by the way, it was amazing to hear Chadwick Boseman's voice again, but seeing like T'Challa there as a person who had been taken by Vision, but he wasn't really killed. But I love that like they saved him and basically he's heading back to Wakanda in order to ensure that they can develop a cure, stuff like that. I love that whole thing because the reality is in that kind of a situation, that's sort of what you would expect somebody to do. Maybe not necessarily a zombie apocalypse, but certainly like an end time kind of situation like Cormac McCarthy's The Road, where people are basically turning to cannibalism in order to survive. And then like you lure people to a location under the false pretense of it being a safe space, and in their desperation, they will follow you, and then you feed on them, right? It's pretty brutal, but it also seems very practical, very realistic with regards to how an event like this would unfold, especially for the character of Vision. But having said that, I've seen a lot of people on Twitter who are talking about how they think this is the absolute best episode of the What If series so far. I gotta disagree. I still say Doctor Strange is the one to beat. I still say episode number 4 is the episode to beat for the What If series. I mean, just the stakes, right? The stakes, the emotion, the ability to identify with the characters, that whole thing, like just the feel of the episode was just incredible, right? Episode number 4 was just an amazing episode. I still think that's the one to beat. This one's second best. It's definitely better than any of the other ones, right? Episodes 1, 2, and 3, but I don't think it's better than episode 4. Having said that, I think we're still waiting for, what is it, Party Thor? And I think we're waiting for Ultron and Vision merging. And I believe they get the Infinity Stones. We're still waiting on those 2 episodes and maybe a couple more. Honestly, it's all just kind of blending together for me at this point. I'm just riding the shows, right? I'm just waiting 1 week to the next to see what happens. But we still have a couple episodes to go. So it's too early to determine which ones are the absolute best here. But let me know in the comment section where you guys think this episode ranks. Do you think it's the best episode? Do you think it's the second best episode? Is there one that you liked better than this one? Let me know what you all think. But having said that, guys, this was a fantastic episode. God, it was beautifully done. I absolutely loved it. But we're gonna bring this to an end. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.